Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today to attend our first Alumni University panel. So before we get started, I would like to tell and let everyone know that this session is being recorded. So we ask that your cameras and mics are off at all times, as well as please refrain from using the chat to avoid any disturbances. Now, without further ado, let's get started for today. My name is Eliza Alfter, and I am a grade 10 IB student at Glen Forest Secondary School, and I will be your moderator for the evening. Now, you guys might be wondering who we are and what we do. We are the FIRST Robotics Team 1325 Inverse Paradox, and we are a community team based in Mississauga. Our team is also a registered charity with the CRA with more than 15 years of experience. And make sure to look out more into our 2020-2021 membership, which we will be talking more about later on this evening. So right now, let's meet our panelists for the night. First up, we have Hannah. Hannah, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
For sure. So, hi guys, my name is Hannah. I'm the former lead programmer of 1325 and currently a first-year software engineering student at the University of Waterloo. On the side, I'm currently working part-time teaching kids how to program Python code.
Thank you, Hannah. Our next panelist is Kyle. Kyle, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kyle Trong. I'm a first-year computer engineering student at York. And I was part of the team for 4 years.
Third up is Shreya, who will now let us know more about who she is and what she does.
Hi guys, I'm Shreya. I just graduated from the University of Waterloo this June, and I did mechatronics engineering over there. And so right now I am a data scientist at RBC. And when I was on 1325, I did a bit of everything, but then in the later years, I focused mostly on leading the business team.
Great, thank you, Shreya. And last but not least, we have Kush. Kush, please tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Hi, everyone. So I'm currently a second-year student studying business at Western. During my 4 years on 1325, I was on the business and award sub-team, and I did a lot of various different activities, and I had a lot of different duties like contacting sponsors, preparing essays for awards, and yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Great, thank you. So these are our 4 panelists for the night. And so before we get started with talking about university applications and our panelists' experiences, if you guys have any questions that you'd like to ask our panelists, use the link that you can see at the top on the slide. And the link is also in the chat where you can ask questions. And if it's a question that you'd like to ask one specific panelist, please include their name so that we know who to address when asking a few of your questions towards the end. And also make sure to use the link and not the chat itself, because we will not be monitoring the chat with your comments and questions. So if you have anything you'd like to say, the link is there for you. So I guess it's time to get started with the questions we have received beforehand and start talking more about university applications with our panelists. I'm just gonna right here. Great. So, because it is application season and many students have started with their applications, Hannah, would you mind giving us a brief overview of the different parts of your application and how it was structured?
For sure. So for Waterloo software engineering, you basically have to write like the default Waterloo application, which explains like why do you want to go to Waterloo? What are your extracurriculars? What awards and activities do you have? And then you also have to state what modular programming experience you have. So basically how many languages you've used and how long you've used them for and like what you've used them to build. So if you have a GitHub, make sure to have that because that's great to include in that section. In addition, because software engineering is part engineering, you have to do a video interview, which you can practice several times. It's like a 2-minute, they put a question and prompt on the screen, and you take 2 minutes to record yourself doing the answer. So there's not actually an interviewer there. And you can practice a lot, so highly recommend doing that too.
Great. So, Kush, because you are a business major, did you find that your application was structured differently than what Hannah just mentioned?
Yeah, for sure. Well, for most business programs, they really look forward um, to your leadership abilities rather than what Hannah said with engineering. It's more technical abilities, like how many language can you code, how efficient you are with your analytical thinking. With business, it's more about creativity, your leadership skills, and what they really look for is metrics. So how you joining a team or how you getting a leadership position in suppose a school club or a robotics team. How did you impact that team? What changes were made when you joined and how those changes really affected the team overall. So really, they do look at grades too, but it's not as competitive grade wise as for engineering or technical programs. So really those essays that you put forward for your business programs are really what make or break the application.
Right, thank you. So, because essays are a part of the application, Shreya, could you let us know a bit whether you had to write an essay for your application? And if you did, what did you talk about, as well as giving some tips for students who might be in the process of writing their essays or who will be writing their essays soon?
Yeah, sure. So when I applied, I was really split between business and engineering. So I kind of applied to both. And so I had the experience of like doing both of those kinds of essays. And so I noticed there was a difference between like the more STEM related essays and the business ones. The STEM ones were a bit shorter and more direct. And the business related ones, like Kush mentioned, are a bit broader and like more open ended. And I think they look at those a lot more than just your marks, especially for the business programs. And I don't remember all of my questions because it was like over 5 years ago. But for Waterloo, I think the question they had that was kind of open ended was to talk about a book you've read that really impacted you. And so, just advice for those and essays in general is first, like, have people look them over. Even if you're like getting good marks in English and stuff like that, it really helps to have a fresh perspective look over what you're writing. And second, if you get a question like that, like for instance about a book that you've read. Try not to write about books that you've read just for class because chances are a lot of other students in Ontario have read the same thing and are probably going to use that in their answer. So try to be unique and try to connect it back to why you're interested in that specific program.
Wow, that really is a great tip that I think should be kept in mind when writing essays. So, Kyle, do you think that you need to be involved in a lot of extracurriculars to get into university, or did you think that it was just your marks in school that mattered?
I think it really comes down to the program you're applying to. It really depends. For example, if you're applying to, I think one of the big ones is new media at Ryerson. They require you to have a nice portfolio. They ask you to write a small essay. They ask you for a bunch of stuff. But other universities, for example, York, I know when I was doing the application process, they were really just asking for marks. So really kind of depends on what you're applying to. But in hindsight, no, not really.
So, Hannah, do you have anything you would like to add on to that?
Yeah. So something that I feel like a lot of people get stressed out about is when they see everyone else has like 10 leadership positions. Like they're the president of the DECA Club, they're the president of the Robotics Club, they're like the founder of this startup somewhere. But the truth is, you don't need to be like the leader of every single thing. Obviously, leadership positions help, but I feel like there's a lot of pressure to like, if you don't start something in ninth grade, like if you don't start your own company in ninth grade, you're like not going to get into like a good university program, and that's 100% not true. On your application, even if you're an active participant, you can include that as an extracurricular. Again, obviously, like having one or two really good leadership positions is really good to write in your essays. But like, if you participate really actively in the CS club, but you didn't found the CS club, that is completely okay. If you're not the founder, but you're still an executive, there's a lot of youth organizations you can join. So don't feel pressured just because you're not like the leader of everything. You can still get into a good program.
For sure. So, Kush, could you tell us what extracurriculars you did alongside robotics that you included into your application that you found helpful?
Well, I did a lot actually. So I was also an executive in DECA. I was the captain of our mock trial team. I was part of our investment club and our comp sci club. But you really don't have to be that broad. In my essays, I only did talk about 2 of those clubs I just mentioned, plus robotics.
Okay.
So you really just need I know for my program for Western, if you're applying to the AEO program, which gets you to the Ivy Business School, you really just need 3 strong leadership positions. And for that, I just use 3 of my clubs. And that relatively goes across most university applications that I did apply to. So even Queen's Commerce and U of T, Rotman, they all look at that same sort of broad area of leadership and your breadth, whether or not you can spread it across different kinds of clubs and activities, or you don't want to spread yourself too thin going to a bunch of different clubs. You just want to have a strong leadership presence in a couple, and I think that's more important than anything else when you're applying to business programs.
Yeah, so I guess you could say that it's more about the relevance of the club in relation to your major, what you're interested in pursuing, rather than the quantity of how many things you've joined.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so, Kush, could you also tell us how many universities or programs do you recommend a student should apply to?
Really, it's up to the student. I don't have a set recommendation because I know personally I applied to almost 14 or 15 different schools. But that was because I was very indecisive. I had no idea what I wanted to do in my life. I applied across, Eng, comp sci, business, across everything. But if you have a set path and you want to go into something, I would say 5 or 6. Always have 1 or 2 backups, and then just go for the 4 or 5 really good programs that you want to get into.
Yeah. So I guess knowing what you want to do really helps narrow out your choices.
For sure.
And so because we are speaking about choosing universities and even within Ontario, Kyle, could you talk a bit about OUAC, what it is, and how to navigate it?
Yeah. So OUAC is kind of, I guess the easiest way to see it is it's the center where you can apply for every single university in Ontario. You have every single option there. They do require you to pick at least 3 at the beginning. What else can I say about it? I'm blanking out. I'm sorry.
Okay. So Hannah, because all our panelists were once a part of our robotics team, could you tell us about how being a part of FIRST and having robotics experience help you with your application? So did you talk about it, reference it in an essay, interview, and was it really relevant to what you chose to do?
So I think I mentioned at first in about like 3 out of the 4 questions in some capacity, just because FIRST is a really good extracurricular to put on your in your essay because it's not relevant to school. Like putting a CS project that you worked on in CS class is much less impressive than if you were on a FIRST team and you programmed something and you saw the robot move, and this is outside of school, so you're dedicating your own time to that. FIRST also, there's like a scholarship little like tick box. So like I didn't get one personally, but being a part of FIRST, you get to like tick that tick box, and then you get automatically entered into the scholarship pool. So you might get a scholarship because you're on FIRST. So yeah, overall, really good to write your experience because it shows that you have initiative to code, especially for programming outside of school.
And so because we haven't heard from Shreya in a while, Shreya, how did you find that being a part of our robotics team helped you with your application?
Yeah, I found it helped me in a lot of ways. First, the most obvious one is because it gave me something really good to put on as an extracurricular. But the really cool thing about FIRST is, like Hannah and Kush were mentioning, you don't have to do like hundreds of extracurriculars, and especially with FIRST, it combines so many different kinds of things into one bigger thing that like you could spend a lot of your time on your robotics team and have so many different things to put on your application. Like for instance, it's not just like you could do like mechanical stuff, electrical programming, and then also outside of all of that, there's the whole business aspect to it as well. And so it really helped my application look more well-rounded than if I were to just join like a very specific club. It helped me do a lot more things than I would have with just joining another single club.
And Kush, how did you find that robotics helped with your application, and what role did it play for you?
Well, honestly, my essays were, well, my main essays were always about my role in FIRST, especially because this is what, and 1325 was what I would, spend most of my time on in high school, extracurricular wise. And so it definitely did help me get through all those essays, but not just that. I think the leadership that I learned being part of FIRST is unmatched. You couldn't find that anywhere else throughout, the talking to judges competition, which sort of helped me articulate my words well when I'm speaking at admissions interviews. And not just that, actually, even when I'm in university now applying for summer internships, FIRST has played a really big part of me building my confidence to speak at interviews. And not just that, it looks really good on your resume too. You'd be surprised the amount of MDs who or directors you're interviewing to are parents of children in FIRST or stuff like that. So it's a great thing to have throughout university, even after applying. So for sure, definitely a great program.
Yeah, so FIRST really is and robotics in general is a really good thing to enroll yourself in if you do want to have a well-rounded resume and to look good, right? And so, are there any resources that you would recommend students use when writing their applications?
So for sure. So if you're about to apply to Waterloo or any university, you might notice that if you go on their subreddit, there's like this admissions mega thread. And basically what you can do is like ask questions about applications, and generally upper years will try to respond. There's something you should note is that none of us work in, like, no upper year or like university student works in the admissions office. So everything we're saying is like based off of what we know from people who have applied previously and like got in. I also highly recommend just like asking on Facebook and asking, well, okay, maybe people don't use Facebook anymore, but like asking on Instagram. Upper years are generally really open to chatting about applications because we've all went through the process. So literally just like messaging someone. This is more like for Facebook. So if you want to get Facebook, because more upper years use Facebook, but you can message people and be like, hey, do you have any advice for running your application? There's a lot of really good groups you can ask. So for example, when I was trying to decide between Waterloo Computer Science and Waterloo Software Engineering, I posted a post in Facebook. This makes me seem really old, sorry. But I posted a post in Facebook and I was like, are any like CS or SE students available for me to ask, like, what do you really like about SE or CS and like things about your program? And I think I got like 20 responses. So I literally spent a day like messaging each one of them who said they were open to chatting. And I got really good feedback. And I have that like all in a doc and it was really good. So I highly recommend reaching out to upper years. And my final thing is you can Google like Waterloo SC like admissions, and a lot of people have written blogs as well as reflections on their first and second term. So you can see like what life is actually like, as well as just general admission tips.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. Did you use any other resources, like maybe other than Facebook or reaching out to people like Hannah mentioned, or like what helped you to write your application?
Yeah, so I think what helped me was talking to people I knew who were in those programs. And I think maybe social media wasn't as big back then, which also makes me feel very old. Well, we definitely had like Facebook and stuff. And I think I wish I had used Facebook as better as a resource to just meet more people that I didn't know. But I would definitely recommend what Hannah said was to reach out to people who you see in the program. A lot of people are also, if you want to know what school they go to, you might also be able to find that on LinkedIn, because I know a lot of high school students may not have that, but especially when you start searching for your first internship, people will recommend making one, and it really helps because you can see what schools people went to, and so that's another way you can find people who go to like a school or program that you'd want to go to. What I've seen now too is like a lot of people posting on YouTube about how they got into a specific school, and they might even post resources to like the application that they used and things like that. And then another thing that really helped me was searching online for examples of what kind of courses I'd be taking for a specific program to kind of make that choice of like whether or not it was a program that I wanted to do, and also to see what kind of skills students in that program might need, so I could try to include that in my application.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess you could really see that talking to a lot of different people and learning more about the course before actually going into it really does help out, because it is a pretty stressful time. And so, Kush, could you tell us what was the most stressful part of writing your applications or even just application season in general?
Honestly, the most stressful part for me was getting myself to start writing it, because after that, ideas just started flowing. And honestly, after you write your first application, you realize how similar they are to all the other university applications where you could just, pick and choose like little parts of one application, but to another. So really just getting over that initial hump of deciding where to apply to and actually starting your applications. And not only that, but getting over that mental gap of, like Hannah brought up in the beginning, how there's like a million kids who have like startups since grade 9 and stuff, just getting past that and putting words on your document, it gets better and better. And you start to realize that, hey, maybe, you know what, I actually am competitive and I do deserve to be in this program. So get over that. And yeah, it's just the hardest part for me was that, and getting over that was probably the best part of my application.
Yeah, for sure. So because we have talked about how important FIRST and robotics was for all of you guys into applying to university, Hannah, could you tell us that maybe if you hadn't been a part of FIRST or our robotics team, do you think you would have gone into the field you are in currently? Or the major that you chose?
Yeah, I think FIRST was definitely an integral part of me choosing software engineering or wanting to code in general, because I had like dabbled in the subject in middle school, but like this is like block coding, and like when you actually write like Python or JavaScript, it's completely different. And FIRST, I think robotics was especially good because sometimes web pages can seem kind of boring because they're just like on a screen. But in FIRST, you actually see like this giant like 120-pound robot move based off your code. That's really cool and really struck my interest in the field, because I saw like what was possible. It's not just like web pages, it's actual like things that move. Also, being a part of FIRST gave me a network of other people, especially other programmers who, like, in middle school, I knew no one else who wanted to code as a career. But in high school, after joining the robotics team, there was a lot of other programmers, people who I surrounded myself with who were also interested in that field, and they kind of gave me mentorship as well as resources. I got introduced to hackathons through a member of the FIRST team, and that was really cool. And now I've attended like 20 of those. So yeah, that's really fun as well. So definitely recommend it if you want to go to soft-eng or software. FIRST is a good thing.
Trey, did you find that being a part of FIRST helped you choose mechatronics and maybe not anything else you had in mind previously?
Yeah, definitely. Like I think in general, FIRST really introduced me to like engineering and what it entails. And I think part of that was that there were so many different parts to it. And it actually kind of made it harder for me because I liked all of the different parts, and I also really liked the business side of things. And I knew I kind of wanted to do all of those things, so I didn't know what to choose. And then mechatronics really stood out to me because it seemed like an interesting combination of a lot of kinds of engineering. And so FIRST helped me out by kind of exposing me to not just like one very specific kind of engineering. And I didn't really know what engineering was before I started FIRST, but it exposed me to like the different subjects in that broader field. And it also showed me a lot of people who were actually working in engineering. So a lot of the mentors we had come in were actual people who were software engineers, mechanical engineers, things like that. And so I got a better idea of like what they do in their day-to-day work, and it made me more interested in the field.
Yeah, so FIRST really seems like it helps really surround you with people who you found were like interested in the same thing as you and help to go where you want to and choose your major. And Kush, do you find that any skills you gained while being a part of a FIRST robotics team you apply you apply even now while pursuing business?
Oh, for sure. Oh my goodness. So definitely the presentation skills that I learned at FIRST, once again, unmatched. There's nowhere else that I could have possibly learned those skills. And they come in handy a lot, especially when pursuing a business degree, because all the case competitions and all the industry professionals you have to talk to. So there's one thing that's really important that it's taught me is how to articulate your words well and how to prioritize what information you should put forward when in interviews and even when applying to university applications, because there's always a time limit or a character limit. And so I think that's what I learned. That's from FIRST when I'm applying things in my university life, even in case competitions and interviews, and it just spreads all across. So it's definitely a great program that I'm very glad I joined in high school.
Yeah, it for sure really is a good program. You can learn so many different skills that you probably don't even think just by hearing the word like robotics team, probably don't think you can earn so much other than like the usual, like learning how to build a robot or programming or coding. But there really are a lot of other skills that people can gain. And Hannah, because you did mention earlier about FIRST scholarships, do you have any more information that you can give us that you know about FIRST scholarships that people might be interested in?
Yeah, for sure. So there's this entire website of like First Canada scholarships, which we can like link after the presentation. But you have like scholarships from a bunch of different types of scholarships. You have ones for women in STEM. You have just general like leadership, and so I highly encourage like search out for scholarships. Like you want to search up scholarships a lot. I honestly spent like an entire day just like sitting down at my laptop and like searching up scholarships, because I think that's just the best way you can find the really niche ones or the ones that like you qualify for. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so because it does look like we are getting quite a few questions from the Q&A chat, we can move on to asking some of those. So this question is for Hannah, and it's asking, Hannah, what are some good side projects for a resume?
Okay. Side projects. So hackathons are very, very good. If you don't know what hackathon is, because I think I mentioned the term earlier, but I forgot to explain it. It's basically it's mostly 24-hour to 36-hour long kind of like sprint, where you try to hack or like code a product with a team of like approximately 4 students within the short time frame. Sometimes there's a theme, so sometimes you'll have like a product relating to healthcare, a product relating to blockchain or AI or something like that. But these are really good ways to like motivate yourself because you have such a short time frame, and you would think that you wouldn't feel motivated, but you actually do, because the thought of submitting an incomplete project by the end is like it's not a good feeling. So generally, you'll work really, really well within those 2 or 3 days. 2 or 3 days, and you can definitely put that on your resume, even if you don't win. It just shows you have initiative to work outside of school. Other side projects, really just like if you want to create a game, go ahead and create a game. Portfolio websites, I highly recommend making those. That's super easy to do, and also it includes you can link all the other projects you've done, so you can send like the one link to your portfolio project. And if you have like you don't have enough space on your resume, you can just send the link of your portfolio project, and then they can see all the links there. So overall, it's just a matter of motivating yourself to code anything cool that you wanted to code outside of school.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah, for that. This next question is actually a general question, so I guess we can all just take turns answering. What do you guys like to do in your free time? So I guess you can start with Shreya.
So in my free time, that's a good question. So it's weird when people ask this question because there's like a before COVID answer and then an after COVID answer.
Why don't you give us both?
Yeah, so generally, and it's been really tough because especially with university and like engineering is a very intense program, and so that honestly took up most of my time was like studying for exams and like applying for jobs. And with Waterloo, you're kind of like applying for jobs at the same time that you're studying for exams. And then we were talking about like side project before, so there's always like working on those and things like that. But in my free time, so I've been trying to get back more into reading because I used to read a lot. And then when school started, I didn't have a lot of time for that. So I've been reading more. I just finished Dune, which is really good sci-fi if you guys are into that. And I'm learning how to play chess, but I'm really bad at it. And I also like, so before COVID, I liked playing volleyball, playing tennis, sports in general, and like traveling. And now because of COVID, I try hiking more. And so those are just some of the things I like doing in my free time.
Wow, sounds interesting. What about you, Kush? What do you do when you have some spare time on your hands?
Honestly, I'm a huge sports fan, so I do watch a lot of soccer, especially because the Champions League is back on now. So that's where most of my free time goes, especially because school's online too, so it's not that hard to sit back and watch a game. But I usually do try to take on a lot of side projects too. In business, you have to be really vigilant on applying to internships and stuff. So I do a lot of that in my free time too, always resume building. Um, and not just that, but I'm always trying to reach out to new people and start networking with them. And that's amazing because with FIRST, my network has grown so much. You'd be surprised how many people know FIRST alumni or were part of FIRST alumni, especially in university. And so those connections you make in your high school days with FIRST, they really do lead on into university too. And so, yeah, so that's kind of what I do with my free time. It's a little nerdy, but yes.
And what about you, Hannah? What do you enjoy doing in your free time?
Okay, so because university is online and it's like super stressful, I really enjoy sleeping. Getting extra hours of sleep during free time is definitely a plus. I also love, like, kind of like what Kush said, I really like building out my portfolio or like working on side projects, just because if there's this one like concept that I'm thinking of that I just never had the time to make, I'll usually spend my free time trying to like make it, just for like my personal, just because I want to, really. Outside of all that like nerd, all of that stuff. I also really love playing video games. I play League of Legends a lot, so I also follow the esports. So yeah, that's a thing. I also love reading. I have been trying to listen to audiobooks while I work because it's like easier to do than like reading the book. But that's kind of hard because then I'm more invested in the story than my studies. So I'm trying to like make time to read a bit every day before I go to sleep. Before COVID, I really liked skating, but now all the arenas are closed and I'm too far away from any outdoor ones, so that kind of sucks. And yeah.
So it sounds like you guys really do keep yourselves busy even with your free time and working on your portfolio and all of that. Our next question is for Hannah. In your grade 12 courses, Chem, Phys, Calc, Functions, English, what grade do you recommend having to give you a moderate chance of being accepted? Did you think that after completing those courses, you were ready for university level ones, or did you need to use any supplementary materials? What a long question. So,
Yeah.
Hannah,
Okay. So the first part, I assume that you've seen the Waterloo engineering curve, which is why you ask for moderate and not certain. Because if you have around, I think it's like a 96, you have like a 40% chance of getting in. So personally, I had a 98.5 around that when I went into software engineering. I think this is for software engineering, but I can also answer a bit of CS. Overall, because I got admitted to CS, so I'm kind of qualified. Yeah. So overall, I would say like around high 90s. For software engineering, I highly recommend like you're aiming for around a 96, 97 because that will probably give you the best chance. Honestly, I know it sounds like super, super high, but that's just really what everything is. Apparently, there's a few people who had like an 100% average, and I'm like, okay, this is fine. And for CS, I'd say around 94, 95, like 93 to 95 would probably be fine. Although you have to remember that even if you are a bit lower, there are exceptions. Usually these are people with like, if you have like an 88, but your like extracurricular portfolio is like super insane, then it is actually possible to get in. But that's usually an outlier. So generally aim for like high 90s, I would say. Second part of the question, was I ready? So Waterloo courses are really nice where they basically start from like the bare basics. So in linear algebra, we started with like with vectors, which was a bit of like calculus and vectors. In calculus, we started like derivatives, or like you started from like log. Yeah, you started from limits and then you went to derivatives and now we're on integration. So I personally did not do integration in high school. So if you didn't do integration either and you want to go into kind of like an engineering, I highly recommend like learning that because it's a huge learning curve. It's completely different from derivatives. So if you want to do that, that's one thing. Overall though, I would say there was not much preparation I needed to do before going in to university. I also say like I didn't really do any preparation and I think I'm doing fine right now. I also want to mention that I didn't go like Gordon Graydon and TL Kennedy did not have like AP or IB. So if you're an AP or IB, I assume like you might be even more ready than I was. So very, very ready. So overall, I think you'll be fine. And there are also, even if you're struggling, there's a lot of resources online and within the university that you can use to help yourself, such as Khan Academy, which is really great.
yeah, Khan Academy really does play a big role in my math class as well. This next question is for Shreya. Shreya, is there any student group who helps with the university application? Or maybe in your time, did you have any student group that you went to?
Yeah, I don't think we had any specific student group that helped us with our application, but I think it would be a pretty good idea if like you ever wanted to start a club or something on schools, like to get a group together and just kind of work on uni apps together. What did help me though was like personally when I was in high school, I didn't really talk to a lot of people in the grades above me, which I kind of wish I did back then because they would have known kind of like what's going on. But the people I did know that were older than me were all on the robotics team. So FIRST really helped me there by kind of automatically giving me that connection to people who I wouldn't have met in my classes or anything like that. And so that was the kind of group I used to get advice, was just talking to like people who were in grades above me that were also on our robotics team and getting some advice from them.
Great. Thank you, Shreya. Our next question is, Kush, what is the best way I can impress a university interviewer? Do you have any tips maybe for anybody who's looking to impress university interviewers?
So just to tie in some of the things that Shreya said earlier, you have to remember university interviewers interview hundreds of students. And if you're gonna, present yourself with something that you think is great, like I read To Kill a Mockingbird, and I thought this was really significant. It helped me, make decisions in my life. That book is pretty widespread across all curriculums in Ontario. So chances are a lot more students have the same thing. So really differentiate yourself, show like core measurable things that you've done. Measurable is really important. Make sure that what you're presenting in front of you is something that you have statistics for. Show them the impact that you've made, even if, you've done DECA. DECA is also something like almost every single student applying to business programs does. Show them like measurable impacts that you've had, like you joining, being executive. Did you increase, student enrollment in that club? Did more people qualify based on some efforts that you did? So little things like that. Just really make yourself stand out in front of all the other interviewers. Just don't pick anything super basic or something you think that everyone else would do, and keep it short and concise. So don't. One of the most popular questions that I get in interviews is always, tell me a little bit about yourself, and it's always, it's you'll guaranteed you'll almost get it in every single interview you get. And so basically you have to walk through your resume and just like tell them a story about it. And it's really important you make it into a story and you make it interesting and intriguing, and not just something basic like, I did robotics for 4 years in high school and I learned how to, talk to the judges. Like that's not really that interesting. Go deep into it, tell them how you were able to use those skills in the future, and just make a story out of it. And I think that should be good. Just keep it engaging.
Yeah, for sure. Hannah, do you have anything that you would like to add on to that about interviewers?
I personally can't really speak to like live interviewers for university applications just because Waterloo Engineering did not have that. I previously mentioned when I was talking about applications, it's like a recorded thing. So you have, so for the practice, they basically put like a bunch of prompts on this, or like one prompt on the screen, and then you have like 2 minutes to record your response. And you can do that as many times as you want to practice. They're all past year questions. So sometimes you'll get like really random ones that's like, I haven't seen Shreya's like favorite book question on the application, but that was a question that I actually got during the interview. So, or like the practice interview. So you can practice those kind of questions. Usually there's one like relating to Waterloo Engineering, like why do you want to go there? And then there's one that's like more open-ended kind of question. Oddly, this year they were both relating to Waterloo Engineering, which kind of threw me off, but you just have to be ready to do that. So overall, to prepare for interviews for Waterloo Engineering, just practice like answering questions spontaneously. I think you have about 30 seconds to prep your answer. So just basically like think about what points you have, because honestly, you don't really have time to write it down. And then just say your answer.
Right, for sure. Practicing really does help get more comfortable with what you want to say. And so, because we were talking about how student groups would be helpful and how Shreya did wish she would have one, would you plan to start a Team 1325 alumni group to help students with university applications?
Wait, is that for a specific person or?
Yeah.
No, anyone can answer. You can go for it.
I think it would be a really cool idea. I know like what was hard for me was in university. like I didn't have a lot of time to come back, especially because Waterloo was like an hour away from Mississauga. So physically going back was difficult. So I think having some sort of group to help people do applications would be a really cool way to help, because I don't think it's as involved as like mentoring an FRC team, but it's still a way that you could help younger students. So I think it definitely would be something I'd be interested in helping out if we ever did form that group.
I'll be looking out for that when I need to write my applications. Right. This question is for Hannah. Hannah, did you find it hard finding co-op, and what helped you throughout that process?
Okay, so I think Shreya is probably more qualified to talk about me than this, because as a first year or during my first term, it's just academic, and then my second term will also be academic, and my third term will be relating to co-op. I have worked 2 previous software jobs during high school, and overall I included FIRST on both his applications, so that probably was like what set me apart. So yeah, I'm gonna toss this question over to Shreya because she's actually taking co-op courses at Waterloo.
Just to add on to that, I think what Hannah's doing is really cool, and I wish I did that in high school, because I think I would have been a lot more prepared for my first co-op. But trying to find like some sort of job, or even like volunteering somewhere, or doing some sort of research or something like that, if you can before starting university, would be super helpful, especially for any sort of like software related job. It's also really easy to do those kinds of jobs virtually, so you wouldn't even have to like commute or travel. um, Co-op was really hard for my first year, because like everyone else, I didn't really have a lot of experience, and having FIRST on my resume, I think, really helped me get that first job. But I'd say definitely don't be discouraged for your first co-op if you're having a lot of trouble finding something. And you kind of think outside of the box. Like a lot of my friends ended up doing research internships on campus, and those were a bit easier to get, but they still look just as good on a resume, and they were really cool experiences as well. So um, don't feel like pressured when you see upper years getting internships at like huge companies, and thinking you're never going to get a job, because if you actually, I think Waterloo publishes like stats for each year, and how well they're doing in getting a co-op job, and first year is always the worst. It's always the hardest to find a job. First really helped me find my first job, because my first co-op was actually working for a company that did engineering education, which is like basically what I did with the outreach team. So that was really helpful. So I'd say use the connections that you have, especially like I found most of the jobs that I got that I really liked weren't just through like interviewing and like applying and interviewing, but I made a connection with the person that worked there. Like I either reached out to them on LinkedIn, or I knew a friend who knew a friend who worked there, stuff like that. And it does feel kind of unfair. Like you still have to go through the entire interview process and like make sure that you're skilled enough to do the job, but having a connection at a specific company would also really help you get that first job, because it helps you stand out from like the hundreds of other resumes that people send in.
Thank you, Freya, for that. And due to the time constraint, this is our last question. And so I guess each of you could take turns with this one. What are some last pieces of advice that you guys have for people who are currently applying to university? So, Krish, I guess we can start with you.
I think mine would primarily be don't discount yourself. Once again, bringing in Hannah's point, there's always going to be people who are better or who are worse. Just put in your best efforts, write that essay, and just send it through. Another thing, actually, with interviews, always make sure you do research before you go into your interview. You know, you always want to tie back how the skills you have can help the school that you're applying to, or even the workforce, or even the job you're applying to. So yeah, those are 2 key takeaways for me, I guess.
Hannah, what about you? Because you did go through this recently, so what advice do you have for people who are also in the process right now?
So start your application early, because I know a lot of people, and me included, procrastinated. The last thing you want is to like not be able to submit your application on time. You really don't want that to happen. So make sure you start early. Also, something else really good that if you start early is that you can actually get upper years and sometimes like professional reviewers to review your application. I actually was lucky enough to get 2 upper years to look over my application about like 2 weeks before it was due. And I was only able to do that because I already had it done, and then they had time to like review it, and then I had time to make edits. So even though it seems like the due date's a long way away, right? Or I assume it's like still in February-ish. because it was last year. Might have changed, but make sure you finish well before your deadline, and then you have a lot of time to make edits. I also recommend asking like friends or family members to look through it, just because they might catch something that you didn't catch because you've been writing this application for or your essay questions for like the past few days. So yeah.
And Shreya, what about you? What do you have to say to our listeners about writing their applications?
So I think what I said about starting early is really good advice. And another benefit of that is like it gives you a lot of time to just like write and then stop, forget about it, and then like a few weeks later come back and look at it. Because I know I did that from my applications, and I'd look back at some of the essays I wrote and be like, oh my gosh, like what was I thinking? This is the worst thing, and I'd like completely change it. So being able to have some time and gain some perspective really helped me. And also, like I know it sounds kind of corny saying this, but don't kind of put too much pressure on yourself. A lot of people think that this kind of time will like completely decide their future, and that's further from like that couldn't be further from the truth, because like it really doesn't matter what school you go to. Like yeah, definitely some schools will have their advantages, but I think a lot of it is also just based on kind of hype that other people create, and pressure that a lot of people put on themselves. And like I know a lot of people think there are certain schools like for engineering, like I thought if I didn't get into Waterloo, like I'd never get a job that I wanted. But like my friends who are going to other schools have had just as good of a time, if not better, and they're doing really well in their careers as well. So definitely don't feel like you only have a certain path that you have to take, because it really doesn't matter what school you go to in the end. It's a lot more about the individual and the effort that you put in, no matter what school you go to.
Great. Thank you so much, Hannah, Kush, and Shreya, for telling us about your experiences. And because we are running out of time, we will be wrapping up right about now. So I will just share my screen once again. So, wait, can you guys see this? Okay. So, over here, we do have a list of resources gathered for you guys to check out. And so these resources give more information about FIRST and their scholarships, Ontario and Canadian universities, as well as just a few general tips for writing university applications. And we will have these resources posted on our website for you guys to check out later if you are interested in taking a look at them. Also, please make sure to follow us on our socials, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at FRC 1325 to receive updates and to keep up with what we are doing and what events we are planning. Also, make sure to visit our website to learn more about who we are and what we do at team1325.com. We will also be posting our recorded version of this session on our website for anyone who missed it. And we'll also be posting answers to your questions that we might have not been able to get to. So please do make sure to head on to our website for all of that. I would also like to add that registration for our team has opened for this year and is open for students ages 13 to 18. And because we have heard from our alumni, I'd like to speak about my personal experience as well with FIRST and robotics. So this will be my second year on the team, and I would really say that it definitely is a great experience during our high school years. Personally, I wasn't very interested in taking part to build an actual robot or coding or things like that. But I found that being a part of the business team was something that I found more interesting and suited my taste a bit better. So there's always something to do on the team that suits your interests, because there are a lot more aspects to a robotics team than you might think there are. And overall, you do learn a lot along the way and can strengthen your leadership skills. You learn to cooperate with others and how to interact with them, as well as learning more about the etiquette of friendly competition. So please do head on to our website to learn more about our team and the registration process if it is something you are interested in doing. And I really encourage everyone to do check out our registration, because it really is a worthwhile experience. And on that note, be sure to join us for our next alumni panel, which will be taking place tomorrow at 7 to 8 p.m., same time as today. And tomorrow we will be discussing career choices and the different paths to choosing a field with a different set of our Team 1325's alumni. So I do want to say thank you everybody for joining us today and taking time out of your day to listen to our alumni's experiences, and hopefully you learned something valuable and gained some advice and tips to writing your university applications. And I'd also really like to give a big thank you to all our alumni for taking time out of their busy days to let us know more and give us an insight on their experiences to help us out when writing our own applications. I do know that I've learned a lot as well, personally, that I can maybe work on when I'm writing these applications in a few years' time. So once again, thank you everybody for joining us here today, and have a wonderful rest of the night. Thank you. Bye.